Welcome to Read and Learn English. Today, I have a special story for you. One that will help you improve your English listening and reading skills at the same time. But before we start, let me ask you, how do you usually practice your English? Do you like listening to stories, or do you prefer reading, or maybe both? Please write your answer in the comments. I'm very curious to know. Learning English can sometimes feel hard or boring if you only focus on grammar or vocabulary lists. But one of the best ways to improve is by reading and listening to stories. Stories are powerful because they help us learn new words and phrases in a natural way. They also keep us interested, so learning feels fun, not like a chore. When you listen to a story, you train your ears to understand spoken English, the rhythm, the sounds, and the intonation. When you read at the same time, your brain connects the sounds with the written words. This double practice helps you remember better and speak more naturally. In this channel, Read and Learn English, I always bring stories that are simple enough for English learners, but interesting enough to keep you hooked. Today's story is about a situation many people can understand, when someone has to make difficult choices because of life's challenges. It's a story full of emotion, hope, and learning. You don't have to be afraid if your English is not perfect yet. The story uses clear, everyday language, so you can follow along easily. Listen carefully, and if you want, read the subtitles or the transcript to help you understand better. Also, don't worry if you don't understand everything the first time. Listening and reading regularly will improve your skills step by step. The important thing is to keep practicing and not give up. Now, here is a question for you. What kind of stories do you find most helpful or interesting for learning English? Adventure stories? True life stories? Stories with a lot of conversation? Share your answer below. I love reading your comments and learning about your preferences. Remember, practicing with stories is one of the best ways to build your English skills naturally. It helps you learn how people really speak, how sentences flow, and how to express emotions and ideas clearly. So, get ready to enjoy this story, listen carefully, and follow along with the reading. After the story, I will share some useful words and expressions from the story to help you learn even more. Thank you for being here on Read and Learn English. Don't forget to like this video if you find it helpful, and subscribe for more stories and lessons every week. Now, let's begin the story. Chapter 1. The Watchful Eye. The rain tapped softly against the windshield of the patrol car, forming tiny rivers that traced slow paths down the glass. Officer Raymond Carter sat behind the wheel, his eyes half closed, his fingers wrapped loosely around a lukewarm cup of coffee. The quiet of the late afternoon shift had settled in, and the city moved with a tired rhythm. It was the kind of day that made Carter reflect. He had been a police officer for nearly 30 years. He'd seen the city change, buildings grow taller, streets more crowded, people more hurried. He had chased thieves through alleyways, talked jumpers down from rooftops, and broken up more arguments than he could count. Yet, in all that time, one thing had remained the same: his belief in rules, in right and wrong. Crime was crime, no matter the reason behind it. That's how he'd always done his job. From his parked car on the corner of 7th and Elm, he had a clear view of the street. Across from him stood a small, family-run pharmacy, the kind of place that hadn't changed much in decades. Its windows were cluttered with signs for cough syrup, vitamin supplements, and half-price deals. An elderly pharmacist was visible through the glass, hunched behind the counter, busy with his books. Carter took a sip of his coffee and sighed. Just then, his eyes caught a flicker of movement. A boy, maybe 12 or 13, stood by the entrance of the pharmacy, thin, dressed in a worn-out hoodie and sneakers that looked a size too big. He kept glancing through the window, then at the street, then back again. Something about the way he shifted his weight, fidgeted with his sleeves, and stared too long caught Carter's attention. He watched as the boy stepped inside. A minute passed, then another. Carter straightened up in his seat. The boy suddenly burst out of the pharmacy and sprinted down the sidewalk, clutching something in both hands. Carter's instincts kicked in. He dropped the coffee and reached for the door handle. "Hey!" he shouted, stepping out of the car. "What are you doing?" The boy turned his head, eyes wide with fear. Without a word, he ran faster. Carter was older now, but he still had the training. He gave chase, boots splashing in puddles as he followed the boy through the narrow streets. The boy turned sharply into an alley, but Carter was right behind him. After a few short minutes, the boy stumbled. Carter caught him by the arm and spun him around. "You're in trouble now," he said, breathing hard. The boy didn't speak. He just looked up, eyes full of something Carter couldn't place. Not anger, not defiance, but something else. Something deeper. Still holding the boy's arm, Carter looked down at the item he had stolen. A small box. Medicine. Chapter 2. The Chase. The box was small, wrapped in white paper with a red pharmacy label across the top. The boy held it close to his chest as he ran, pushing past a woman with an umbrella and darting between two parked cars. Behind him, he could hear the officer's heavy footsteps slapping against the wet pavement, getting closer with every step. His heart pounded in his chest. He didn't look back. All he knew was that he had to get away. He had to get the medicine home. His mom needed it. She was getting worse every day and they had no money. He had tried asking the pharmacist to help, but the man said no. Rules were rules. So he had waited, watching until no one was near the counter, then grabbed the medicine and ran. Officer Carter was not as fast as he once was, but the years had taught him how to read people. The boy was running with desperation, not guilt. Still, that didn't matter. Stealing was stealing. Rules were rules. He followed the boy down a narrow alley where rainwater dripped from broken gutters and trash bins lined the walls. "Stop!" Carter shouted. "You're only making it worse!" The boy didn't stop. At the end of the alley, the boy tried to turn left, but his foot slipped on a wet patch of concrete. He fell hard onto the ground, the box of medicine skidding across the pavement. Carter reached him within seconds, grabbing him by the arm and pulling him up. "Got you," he said, catching his breath. The boy struggled, trying to break free, but Carter held firm. "Calm down," he said. "You're not going anywhere." The boy's eyes were wide with panic. "Please," he whispered. "Please, I just need to get home." Carter didn't answer. He picked up the box of medicine and looked at it. It wasn't expensive, just a few pills in a blister pack, but it was still stolen. He led the boy back to the car, silent except for the sound of sirens far off in the distance and the steady drizzle of rain. At the station, Carter brought the boy into a small room and sat him down. The boy kept his head low, his hands folded in his lap. "What's your name?" Carter asked. The boy didn't answer. "Where are your parents?" Still no answer. Carter sighed. "You stole from that pharmacy? That's serious. You could be charged with theft." The boy looked up slowly. "I didn't do it for me," he said. His voice was quiet, but steady. "I did it for my mom." Carter narrowed his eyes. "That's not how it works, kid." But even as he said it, a small part of him, one he hadn't listened to in years, wondered if there was more to the story. Chapter 3. The Cry in the Cell. The holding cell was cold, with pale gray walls and a steel bench that ran along the back. It wasn't meant for long stays, just a place to keep someone until the paperwork was done or a guardian came to pick them up. But hours passed, then a full day, and still no one came for the boy. He sat curled in the corner, arms around his knees, head resting against the wall. He hadn't eaten much, only pushed the food tray away when the officer brought it. Carter had seen this behavior before, kids clamming up, scared or angry or both. He didn't press. He told himself the boy would talk when he was ready, or when a social worker arrived. Either way, it wasn't his problem anymore. Still, something about this case gnawed at him. That night, Carter stayed late to finish reports. The station was quiet, the hum of the vending machine the only real sound. Around midnight, as he prepared to leave, he passed the holding cell and paused. A soft sound was coming from inside. He stepped closer. The boy was sitting on the bench now, his back to the bars. His voice was barely above a whisper, broken and trembling. "Stay strong, Mom. Please. Just a little longer." Carter stood frozen. The words weren't meant for him. They were a private plea, repeated like a prayer. "Stay strong, Mom. I'm coming home soon. I promise." Tears rolled down the boy's cheeks, but he didn't wipe them away. He just kept whispering, rocking slightly as if the rhythm of his voice might calm the storm inside him. Carter stepped back, unsure what to feel. He had heard all kinds of lies in his time, stories made to gain sympathy, escape punishment. But this didn't feel like that. This felt real, raw. Back in his office, Carter tried to shake the feeling. He told himself it wasn't his job to feel sorry. The boy had broken the law. That was all that mattered. Still, those words echoed in his mind. "Stay strong, Mom." The next day, it was the same. Carter heard the whisper again during the late shift. And the day after that, always the same message, always the same trembling voice. He finally asked the front desk officer if any family had contacted the station. "No calls, no visitors," the officer replied, shaking his head. "No emergency contact either. Kids completely alone." Alone. That word hit Carter harder than he expected. He glanced toward the cell again. The boy was still there, still silent by day and weeping by night. What was his story? Why was no one coming for him? Carter told himself not to get involved, but deep down, he knew he already was. Chapter 4. The Story Behind the Tears. The boy had been in the holding cell for 3 days. No guardian had shown up. No social worker had called. No one had come to claim him or even ask about him. He remained quiet during the day, sitting motionless in the corner, and each night Officer Carter still heard the soft, painful whispers. "Stay strong, Mom. I'm coming. Just a little longer." By the 4th day, Carter's patience had started to wear thin. He told himself it was the long hours or the cold air in the station, Or maybe the noise that never stopped in his head when he tried to sleep. But deep down, he knew it was the boy's voice that stayed with him, the kind of voice that didn't lie. That afternoon, Carter stood outside the cell, keys jingling in his hand. "All right, kid," he said. "We're going to have a little talk." The boy looked up slowly. His eyes were tired and red, but there was something steady behind them. Carter opened the cell door and pointed to a small interview room. "In there. Let's go." The boy didn't resist. He followed without a word, sitting quietly across from Carter at the metal table. Carter leaned forward, arms folded. "What's your name?" The boy hesitated. "Leo," he said softly. "Leo what?" "Just Leo." Carter sighed. "Fine. Just Leo. I've been hearing you at night, talking to your mom. What's going on?" Leo looked down at his hands. They were small and thin, with dirt under the nails. "She's sick," he said. Carter raised an eyebrow. "Sick how?" Leo's voice shook. "She hasn't been able to get out of bed for days. She has trouble breathing, and she's always in pain. I think it's her lungs." Carter sat back, skeptical. "And you couldn't take her to the hospital?" "We don't have insurance. We don't have anything." Leo's voice broke. "I tried to get help. I went to a clinic, but they said we needed to pay first. We didn't have the money." "And the medicine?" "She needs it to breathe. She ran out a week ago. I thought maybe if I could just get one more box, it would buy us some time until I could figure something out." Carter stared at him. "So, you decided to steal it?" Leo nodded. "I waited until no one was looking. I didn't want to hurt anyone. I just needed it for her. I didn't know what else to do." There was silence between them. Carter wanted to be angry. He wanted to stick to the rules like he always had, but sitting across from Leo, seeing the fear and sadness in his eyes, something inside him shifted. This wasn't a criminal. This was a desperate son. Chapter 5. A Heart of Stone. Officer Carter left the interview room with a blank expression. He closed the door behind him and walked down the hallway, his boots echoing on the polished floor. He didn't speak to anyone. He didn't stop. He just went back to his desk, sat down, and opened a new case file. Leo's words lingered in his mind, soft, trembling, desperate, but Carter pushed them aside like he had done 100 times before. He had heard stories like this before. Kids always had a reason. A sick parent, a dying relative, a hungry sibling. It was always something, and it was always meant to earn sympathy. He had learned early in his career not to get pulled in by emotions. Rules were rules. He tapped his pen on the desk and muttered under his breath, "They'll say anything to get out of trouble." He returned to his reports, reviewing arrest records, reading statements, and checking the boxes in his forms. Everything had a process. Everything had its place. And Leo? He was just one more line in the system. One more case to close. Later that day, another officer passed by and paused at Carter's desk. "Hey, you talked to that kid yet? The one who stole the medicine?" Carter didn't look up. "Yeah," said his mom's sick, can't afford a doctor. The officer raised his eyebrows. "That true?" Carter shrugged. "Does it matter? He stole. That's all I need to know." The other officer nodded slowly. "Guess so." Carter finished his report and stood up. It was time for his usual patrol. As he walked past the holding cells again, he glanced inside. Leo was lying on the bench, arms folded under his head. His eyes were open, staring at the ceiling. He didn't say anything this time. Carter hesitated for a moment, then moved on. Out on the street, the city moved as always. Cars honked, people rushed across sidewalks, lights blinked red and green. Carter drove through familiar neighborhoods, stopping now and then to issue a parking ticket or check in with a shop owner. Everything was normal, predictable, but inside, something wasn't sitting right. Every time he passed a family on the street, he thought of Leo. Every time he saw a mother holding her child's hand, he remembered the boy's quiet words. "Stay strong, Mom." He told himself to let it go. The kid had made a choice. There were consequences. That's how life worked. But when he returned to the station that evening and passed the holding cell one more time, he paused. Leo was whispering again. "Please be okay, Mom. Please don't give up." Carter clenched his jaw and turned away. He told himself he was doing his job, that he had a heart of stone. But for the first time in years, he wasn't sure he believed it. Chapter 6. A disturbing call. The rain had returned, light but steady, tapping against the station windows like a quiet warning. Officer Carter was finishing up his shift, rubbing his tired eyes as he reached for his coat. It had been another long day, and he was ready to go home and forget about the boy in the holding cell. Just as he reached for the door, the phone at the front desk rang. The desk officer picked it up. "City Police Department, how can I help you?" There was a pause. The officer listened, his face growing serious. He nodded slowly, then covered the receiver with his hand and looked at Carter. "Hey, Carter, you might want to take this." Carter frowned. "Me? I'm off duty." "Just take it," the desk officer insisted. "She's asking for someone who knows the area." Carter sighed and took the phone. "Officer Carter speaking." The voice on the other end was that of an older woman, trembling and urgent. "Yes. Hello. I'm calling about my neighbor. Her name is Maria Torres. She lives down the street from me. I haven't seen her or her son in days. Their apartment lights have been off. No one answers the door." Carter's pen slipped from his hand. "What did you say her name was?" "Maria Torres. And her son, Leo. He's always helping her. A sweet boy. He's maybe 11 or 12. I'm really worried something's wrong. She's been sick for a long time." Carter's heart thudded in his chest. Leo. He leaned forward. "What's the address?" 112 Westfield Lane, apartment 3B. He didn't need to write it down. He already knew it. "I'm heading there now," Carter said. He hung up the phone without another word. For a moment he stood still, trying to steady his thoughts. The boy's story came rushing back. His whispered prayers, the desperate eyes, the stolen medicine. It wasn't just a story. It was the truth. Carter turned and marched down the hall to the holding cell. Leo was still there, curled up on the bench. "Get up," Carter said. Leo blinked, startled. "What's wrong?" "We're going to your apartment." "Why?" Leo asked, confused and cautious. But Carter didn't answer. He opened the cell door and led the boy out. Every step toward the patrol car felt heavier than the last. For so long, Carter had buried his instincts, following rules without emotion. But now, the weight of his choices pressed on him like never before. As they drove through the darkening streets, Carter gripped the steering wheel tightly, his jaw clenched. The windshield wipers moved in slow, steady beats, brushing away the rain. Leo sat silently in the passenger seat, worry all over his face. "Is something wrong with my mom?" he finally asked. Carter didn't respond right away. "I don't know," he said, "but we're about to find out." And deep inside, he feared they were already too late. Chapter 7. The Silent Home. The patrol car pulled up to a small, run-down apartment building at the edge of the neighborhood. The paint on the walls was peeling, and the front light flickered faintly in the rain. Officer Carter stepped out of the car first, then opened the passenger door for Leo. "This is it," Leo said quietly. His voice was shaky, filled with a fear he had tried to hide. Carter nodded. Together, they walked up the stairs to the third floor. The hallway was dim and smelled of dust and mildew. Carter's boots echoed off the walls as they approached apartment 3B. Leo moved faster, rushing to the door and knocking hard. "Mom, it's me! I'm here!" There was no answer. He knocked again. "Mom, open the door, please!" Still nothing. Carter stepped forward. He tried the doorknob. Locked. He glanced at Leo, then made his decision. With one strong shoulder, he rammed the door. It creaked, then gave way with a loud crack. The apartment was silent. They stepped inside slowly. The living room was small and cold. Blankets were folded neatly on the worn-out sofa. A plate with half-eaten food sat on the kitchen table, untouched for days. Everything felt frozen in time. Leo whispered, "Mom?" There was no sound except the soft dripping of water from a leaky pipe in the kitchen. Then Carter saw the door to the bedroom, slightly ajar. He walked toward it, heart pounding. Pushing the door open slowly, he stepped inside. The room was dim, lit only by the weak gray light from the window. A woman lay on the bed, still and quiet. Her skin was pale, her lips slightly parted. She looked peaceful, as if sleeping, but Carter knew better. In her hands, clutched tightly to her chest, was a small photograph. Carter took a few steps closer. His throat tightened. It was a picture of Leo, smiling, holding a toy car, standing proudly beside his mother. On the back of the photo, in faded ink, were handwritten words. "My son. Please help me. I need the medicine." Leo appeared in the doorway behind Carter. His eyes widened as he took in the scene. "Mom," he said, barely above a whisper. He ran to the bed, dropping to his knees beside her. "Mom! Wake up, please! I'm here! I got out! I came back!" But she didn't move. Carter turned away, unable to watch the boy's heart break. He had seen death before, more times than he could count. But this felt different. This wasn't just another sad case. This was the story he had ignored, the truth he had chosen not to believe. And now it was too late. Leo cried softly, holding her hand, his small body trembling. Carter stood in the doorway, the cold air of the apartment wrapping around him like guilt. He had followed the rules, but the rules hadn't saved her. Chapter 8. The Photo and the Message. The dim light in the bedroom cast long shadows across the walls as Officer Carter knelt beside the lifeless woman. The silence was heavy, broken only by the soft, shaky breaths of Leo as he clung to his mother's hand. Carter's eyes fell again on the small photograph resting on the woman's chest. It was worn and faded, corners creased from years of handling. Carefully, Carter reached out and took the photo in his hands. It showed a young boy, smiling gently, his dark eyes bright with innocence and hope. It was Leo. On the back of the photo was a message, written in a shaky, hurried hand. "My son, please help me. I need the medicine." Carter's heart sank deeper with every word he read. The message was a desperate plea from a mother to her child, a cry for help that had gone unanswered for far too long. Leo watched Carter silently, his eyes wide and tear-filled. "Mom wrote this for you," Carter said softly, handing the photo back to the boy. She was asking for help. Leo looked down at the message, then back at his mother. "I tried," he whispered. "I tried so hard." Tears ran down his cheeks as he clutched the photograph to his chest. "I thought if I could get just one more box of medicine, she'd get better." Carter nodded slowly. "I know. And I'm sorry I didn't listen." The boy looked up, searching Carter's face. "Why didn't you believe me?" Leo asked, voice breaking. Carter swallowed hard. "I thought you were making excuses. I thought you were just a kid trying to get out of trouble. But now I see. I was wrong." Leo's shoulders shook with silent sobs. He had lost more than just his mother. He had lost hope. Carter stood and gently placed a hand on Leo's shoulder. "We're going to get you help now. You're not alone." Outside, the rain continued to fall. But inside the small apartment, something began to change. A small spark of understanding, of compassion, and a promise to do better. The photo was more than just a picture. It was a reminder that behind every face, every story, there was a deeper truth waiting to be heard. Chapter 9. A heavy realization. The rain had stopped by the time Officer Carter returned to the station. The streets were quiet, but inside his mind, a storm raged on. He sat alone in the break room, staring blankly at the steaming cup of coffee before him. The bitter taste did nothing to calm the swirl of thoughts. How had he been so wrong? He replayed every moment, the boy stealing the medicine, the whispered prayers in the cell, the woman lying lifeless on the bed. Each memory struck him like a hammer, breaking through the walls he had built around himself. He had seen Leo as a criminal, just a thief, someone who deserved punishment. But now, the truth was clear. Leo was a desperate child trying to save his mother, and Carter had failed both of them. The guilt weighed heavily on his chest. It was a cold, sinking feeling that refused to fade. Carter reached for his notebook and began to write, pouring out his thoughts in messy, hurried lines. "I was wrong to judge. I was wrong to ignore the boy's cries. I let the system blind me to what really mattered. I failed a child and a mother." His hands trembled as he wrote. The officer who had once believed himself to be fair and strong now felt fragile and uncertain. He thought about the photo, the message written in a mother's desperate hand. "My son, please help me." What kind of help had he given? The question echoed through his mind, relentless and unforgiving. Carter knew he couldn't undo what had happened. The woman was gone, but maybe, just maybe, he could make things right for Leo. He made a silent promise to himself to be more than just a man who followed rules, to listen, to see, to care. That night, sleep came slowly. The officer lay awake, haunted by the heavy weight of his mistakes, but also stirred by a new determination. He would not let this be the end of the story. Chapter 10. Redemption. The morning light filtered softly through the blinds of Officer Carter's small office as he sat at his desk, reviewing files and making calls. The events of the past days weighed heavily on him, but now they fueled a determination to make things right. He had spent the night thinking about Leo, the frightened boy who had stolen medicine to save his mother, and the heartbreaking loss they had both endured. Carter knew the law was clear, but so was his heart. Justice had to be tempered with mercy. Carter picked up the phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in years, a social worker who specialized in helping children in difficult situations. After explaining Leo's case, the social worker promised to visit the boy and find a safe place for him to stay. Next, Carter arranged for Leo's release from the holding cell. The boy was frightened but hopeful as he stepped out, eyes wide at the officer's unexpected kindness. "Leo," Carter said quietly, "we're going to get you help. You don't have to do this alone anymore." Over the next weeks, Carter visited Leo regularly. He helped the boy apply for support programs and even set up tutoring to make up for the time Leo had lost in school. Carter became more than an officer to Leo. He became a mentor, a protector. But the path to redemption wasn't easy. The law still required that Leo face some consequences for his actions. Carter accompanied the boy to court, standing by his side as the judge listened to the full story. The illness, the stolen medicine, the mother's tragic death. The judge, moved by the circumstances, decided on a balanced sentence. Leo would attend community service and counseling instead of jail time, with the hope that he could build a better future. As the days turned into months, Carter and Leo worked together to heal the wounds left by the past. Carter learned to listen deeply, to see beyond the surface, and to lead with compassion. For Leo, the officer's support was a lifeline, a chance to grow beyond the mistakes made in desperation. One afternoon, as they walked through a small park near the station, Leo smiled up at Carter. "Thank you," he said simply. Carter smiled back, a weight lifting from his shoulders. "You're stronger than you think, Leo. And I'm proud of you." The officer realized that redemption was not just about fixing what was broken. It was about building something new, together. In the quiet moments between duty and life, Carter found hope in the boy's resilience and in the possibility of change. They had both made mistakes, but now they had a chance to move forward, stronger, wiser, and with hearts open to the future. Thank you for listening to this powerful story here on Read and Learn English. Stories like this one remind us that life is not always black and white. Sometimes behind a simple action, there is a deep, painful truth. This tale of hardship, judgment, and redemption gives us a chance to think, feel, and most importantly, learn. If you've made it to the end, give yourself a pat on the back. You've just listened to a full English story. That's a big achievement, especially if English is not your first language. Stories are one of the best ways to learn a new language. Why? Because they connect grammar, vocabulary, and listening practice with real emotion and situations. You don't just learn English, you live it. Now let me ask you a question. What's one new word or phrase you learned from this story? Write it in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Also, try to think about how this story made you feel. Did you feel sad, surprised, or maybe hopeful? When you describe your feelings in English, you're not just practicing. You're growing your emotional vocabulary, which is very useful in real conversations. Here's something to try. Listen to this story again tomorrow or next week. The second time you listen, you'll understand even more. You'll notice new words, better pronunciation, and deeper meaning. This is how fluency begins, through repetition and connection. If you enjoyed this story and want more like it, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. I post more graded English stories just like this, filled with emotion, learning, and meaning. They are perfect for improving your listening, expanding your vocabulary, and training your ear to understand natural English rhythm. And remember, it's okay if you didn't understand everything. Every time you listen, you get better, one sentence at a time, one story at a time. I'll leave you with this thought. In life, everyone has a story. Sometimes, what we see on the outside hides a very different truth inside. How can we become better listeners, not just in language but in life? Think about it, and keep learning. Keep listening. I'll see you in the next story, right here on Read and Learn English.